And that does it for us. We'll see you here again tomorrow.
The CBS Evening News is up next. Have a good evening.
Good night.
U.S. warplanes and troops land in Saudi Arabia. President Bush says they are for defense. Quote, "We are not at war." In defiance, Iraq annexes Kuwait. Other Arab nations hold a mini summit tomorrow. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting live from Amman, Jordan. Good evening. It's early morning here in the Middle East. There are these major developments in the growing Gulf crisis. The first wave of U.S. combat troops ever to serve in Saudi Arabia on an actual military mission arrived in the Desert Oil Kingdom. President Bush insisted their role is, for at least the moment, defensive, quote, "to draw a line in the sand in front of menacing Iraqi troops across Saudi Arabia's border in Kuwait." In a direct challenge today, Iraq formally annexed the conquered Kuwait. Here in Jordan, King Hussein said he would not recognize that annexation. A mini-Arab summit is now scheduled to begin in Cairo tomorrow. For the latest on the military picture, we go to the Pentagon and CBS News correspondent David Martin. David?
Dan, the first American combat aircraft and troops began arriving in Saudi Arabia today, but they are only a small fraction of the force that's being sent on what is an unprecedented mission that has no end in sight.
To put forces of significant size, air and ground forces, into Saudi Arabia is a new departure for us. The situation's uncertain. We don't know how long it will last. We don't know when it will end.
More F-15 fighters left their East Coast base today to join those already on the ground in Saudi Arabia, where they will team up with AWACS early warning radar planes to defend against Iraqi aircraft. Chartered commercial airliners continued to ferry elements of what will be a 5,000-man brigade from the 82nd Airborne.
My mission right now and the mission of the Armed Forces of the United States is to take up defensive positions.
Pentagon officials say thousands more troops and scores of aircraft are still to come. F-16 ground attack jets will head for Saudi Arabia within the next 24 hours. Transport ships filled with equipment and supplies for ground troops are steaming toward Saudi Arabia. And officials say brigades from the 24th Infantry Division, the 101st Airborne Division, and the 2nd Marine Division will soon be flown into Saudi Arabia. The soldiers' families could only wait and watch at home.
Well, that's part of being in the Army, the need to know basic. If you don't need to know, then you won't know.
All of the American servicemen will be provided with protective clothing against the possibility of an Iraqi chemical attack.
The Iraqi armed forces do have chemical weapons. They have used them in the past. It's a threat that we're concerned with, and I treat it as a capability that is there, it could be used.
To back up the forces ashore, the aircraft carrier Eisenhower went through the Suez Canal today to join the 14 U.S. Navy ships already operating in and around the Persian Gulf. A Soviet frigate is also operating in the Gulf as the U.S. works to put together an international naval blockade of Iraqi oil shipments. 19 more U.S. warships, led by the carrier Saratoga and the battleship Wisconsin, are just beginning their voyage across the Atlantic. Again today, F-111 bombers could be seen at a NATO base in Turkey, from which they could easily reach the oil fields in northern Iraq. Although the mission now is to defend Saudi Arabia, that could change.
We're prepared for other missions that may be assigned to us, but I don't want to get into speculating about what those possible missions might be or the size of forces needed to accomplish them.
Pentagon officials say that so far there has been no sign of any Iraqi reaction to the flow of American forces into Saudi Arabia. But Saddam Hussein still has more than 100,000 troops massed just across the border inside Kuwait. Dan?
President Bush went on nationwide radio and television early this morning to explain to the American public in simple, direct, heartfelt language why he decided to send U.S. troops to Saudi Arabia and what he believes is at stake. Correspondent Leslie Stahl has the latest from the White House. Leslie?
Dan, in his public
Standing up for our principles will not come easy. It may take time and possibly cost a great deal.
The usually cautious George Bush said in a nationwide address this morning that he's risking military action because the U.S. now imports nearly half the oil it consumes and could face a major threat to its economic independence. And he said he sent the troops because appeasement doesn't work.
They will not initiate hostilities, but they will defend themselves.
Both the Saudi and the Kuwaiti ambassadors came to the White House today for further reassurances that, as the president said, America will stand by her friends. And 17 other ambassadors were briefed at the State Department. By midday, Mr. Bush was back at the microphones.
A line has been drawn in the sand. The United States has taken a firm position.
Visibly tired but sounding resolute, the president warned Saddam Hussein not to use his chemical weapons.
I would think that he'd know that given the way the world views the use of chemical weapons, that it would be intolerable, and that it would be dealt with very, very severely.
The president made it clear that the troops are not there to oust Hussein from Kuwait. That's what the economic sanctions, including an embargo on food shipments, are for.
There are some indications that he's already beginning to feel the pinch, and nobody can stand up forever to total economic deprivation.
The president's action won support across the political spectrum.
American interests and our long-standing ties with Saudi Arabia make the president's decision to help defend Saudi Arabia the correct one.
I would hope that Saddam Hussein clearly understands the message. It's not an idle threat. It's very serious.
The support from Congress is reflected in public opinion. A CBS News New York Times overnight poll shows that 61% approve of the president's decision to send troops to Saudi Arabia. Only 28% disapprove. White House officials say they're relieved that Iraq did not stage a preemptive strike at Saudi Arabia before U.S. troops began arriving there. They say the president is now ready for a waiting game, a long one if necessary. Dan?
Events here in the vast Middle East are tumbling one on top of another, fast, heavy, and dangerous. The government of Iraq's President Saddam Hussein today formally annexed the tiny emirate its armor and troops stormed only 6 days ago. Iraq said it acted at the request of Kuwait's new government, which it installed after deposing the emir. Iraq's rulers claim to have no designs on Saudi or any other territory. Iraq also charged today that Israel is planning to attack using warplanes with American markings. At this point, diplomatic efforts to stabilize the crisis may be too little too late. But in Saudi Arabia, foreign ministers of the Gulf Cooperation Council held emergency talks today on the crisis. The Saudi foreign minister was in Damascus during the day for talks with Syria's President Assad. Arab leaders have set an emergency mini-summit for tomorrow in Cairo, what Jordan's King Hussein calls a last chance.
I believe that this has brought about a feeling by my colleagues and as well as myself that such a summit ought to be held as soon as possible.
Britain said it will send men and weapons to join the Americans in a multinational force, though President Mubarak so far is denying Egyptian troops will take part. But Mubarak warned Iraq that trouble is on the way, telling Baghdad not to think, quote, the fleets are just going to sit there sleeping. First-hand accounts of what it was like when inside Kuwait during last week's Iraqi attack are beginning to emerge now. Jim Calvin is an American who coached Kuwait's national basketball team. He's safe now in Saudi Arabia. From New York today, CBS News correspondent Ed Bradley talked with Calvin, who described what happened when the Iraqi army came in.
We saw him shooting civilians. Even the day that he was supposed to be pulling out, they were still shooting people. The first night of curfew, we could look out our window on 4th Ring Road, and there was still, Kuwait people just did not believe there was a war going on. You could see the Iraq soldiers stopping a car, and all of a sudden the lights would go out on the car, and you would hear machine gun fire. No people ever left the car.
U.S. diplomats said tonight that armed guards have been posted around the Baghdad hotel, where at least 39 Americans picked up in Kuwait are now being held. Some foreigners have escaped the danger by crossing the line, making a run for the border here into Jordan. A CBS News camera crew went to the border and talked with some of them today. After an 11-hour bus ride from Baghdad, 6 American businessmen were welcomed in Jordan. These were the lucky ones. Stranded for days, they complained they got better treatment from the Iraqis than their own government.
Can't get information from them. They don't know what's happening. It's everybody for himself and God for all. We didn't get too much feedback or supportive help from the embassy. They would only give us vague answers.
Frustrated, these Americans finally hitched a ride with a group of German and British businessmen who wanted to make a break for the Jordanian border, leaving a lot of their friends behind and feeling
relieved. Yeah, a bit feeling at the same time, you know, it's kind of like abandoning ship because there's a lot of guys left there who can't get out. I mean, we're the fortunate ones.
The men were kept in their hotel rooms in Baghdad and couldn't make phone calls home. Everyone knew about the Kuwaiti invasion, but after hearing President Bush's speech on the radio, all were glad they didn't wait any longer to leave.
People were concerned that if the situation gets worse, and daily we didn't know, so it may have got worse by the day, that we wanted to be out because of that.
And tonight, the busload from Baghdad arrived in Amman. They wanted to tell the families back home everyone they've seen has been well treated, but thousands of Americans are still caught in Iraq and Kuwait. No one can know when and if they'll be allowed to leave. Straight ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, live and direct from the Middle East, I'll be talking to a military expert on what to look for next. So stay here with us.
You're on your way.
Kids and science can really get together in the right kind of place. So Dow has developed and funded the TouchTech Laboratory here at Impression 5 in Lansing, Michigan.
In this particular experiment, we're going to make a solid out of 2 liquids.
It's a hands-on museum that puts the wonders of science at a child's fingertips.
Here you go, PJ.
And who knows what that could lead to.
Dow lets you do great things.
Just this much Cortaid heals more kinds of itches than all of these. And for irritating rashes, more doctors recommend Cortaid than any other brand. Cortaid. It heals.
We think AT&T's left you in the dark. Sprint means live operators, instant credit, better overall savings than AT&T. In writing, AT&T, lighten up. Call Sprint now and switch.
I guess I just didn't realize how my indigestion, you know, that burning feeling, affected me and everyone around me, even my kids. So I decided to ask my doctor if I needed a prescription. He said, prescription? You don't need a prescription. You just need Mylanta. Mylanta. I figure if it's the one doctors recommend most, I'll give it a try. And you know, it worked. Fast. My doctor was right. He said I didn't need a prescription. My doctor said Mylanta.
Standing by in our New York studio now is our CBS News consultant on military matters, retired General George Christ of the United States Marines. Until his retirement 2 years ago, General Christ commanded U.S. forces in the Persian Gulf area. General, you've been watching the movement of personnel and equipment. We want to abide by President Bush's admonishment not to talk about anything that's security related. But as you watch it, what do you note and what do you see?
Dan, the mission of deter and defend could rapidly take on greater dimensions. The Navy's been assembling a capability to attack Iraq with missiles, Tomahawk land attack missiles. They have a range of 1,400 nautical miles. They can cover all of Iraq, hit her facilities and her airfields. They're already on 2 cruisers, either in or near the Persian Gulf, and there's 2 more ships on the way in. They'll have a total capability of 4 ships to go after Iraq. In another area, they're obviously getting ready to ship ground troops, or at least be prepared to do so. The advanced elements of the 18th Airborne Corps have gone in. This is the organization that would command and control a multi-division operation. We've already heard the 101st, the 82nd, and the 24th are on alert. Additionally, there's a Marine Brigade on alert. The supplies and equipment for that Marine Brigade are already on their way from Diego Garcia toward the Gulf. Overflight rights have been obtained for Morocco and Egypt. That's the flight routes that would normally be used to bring troops in. What we're seeing here is capability now being put behind the options.
Capability to go on the offensive if President Bush decides to do that. What are Saddam Hussein's options at the moment, General?
Well, Dan, if I was sitting next to Saddam Hussein as his military advisor, I'd have to tell him I think Saudi invasion doesn't look very attractive at the moment. The risks are going to outweigh the benefits. On the other hand, I might advise him, let's hold Kuwait and let the U.S. come to us. We're fairly strong on the ground. We've got a good air defense. We can take a lot of punishment if they want to hit our installations. We'll give the Americans damage, and the Americans are going to take casualties. And maybe we can outlast the U.S. in the long run.
General Chris, thank you very much. Coming up next from New York, Ed Bradley will be talking about the continuing and building economic impact of all of this, and he'll have the other news of the day. Later on, we'll be back live and direct from here in the Middle East.
What do professionals do when they get a clogged sink, a stopped-up shower, a backed-up tub? They just pour in the power. The professional power of professional strength liquid Drano with 3 active ingredients. The power it takes to clear really tough clogs. Professionals use the professional liquid, and now you can too. Pour in the power. New professional strength liquid Drano.
Red Lobster. Tonight, 30 shrimp, just $8.99. Red Lobster for the seafood. Scabby and oh, golden fried. Red Lobster for the seafood lover. Grilled and lemon pepper. 30 shrimp on one plate, just $8.99. Red Lobster for the seafood lover in you. Kids get a shrimp dinner for just $1.99 and a free hidden treasure pack.
Don't make a big fat mistake. Don't cook wholesome food in butter, margarine, or oil. Use Pam cooking spray instead. You can save 90% of the fat and calories. No mistake about it.
These nutritional fads can be very confusing. Who wants to guess about nutrition? Well, the Surgeon General recommends 7 guidelines for nutritious eating and whole wheat total meets all 7. Total takes the guesswork out of nutrition.
How much will gasoline cost you tomorrow and in the days following? That's the question for consumers tonight. And a presidential plea today demonstrated the government's interest in that problem and its possible effect on the federal budget. Business correspondent Ray Brady reports.
Former oil man George Bush laid it right on the line.
I'm asking the oil companies to do their fair share. They should show restraint and not abuse today's uncertainties to raise prices.
But even as the president was speaking, the average price of unleaded gasoline at the pump went up today by nearly 4 cents a gallon, a rise of more than 16 cents in just a week. Many oil companies say there's no way they can hold down prices in a runaway market.
Yeah, we'll just simply go out of business. I mean, nobody can sell below cost for very long. We just can't do it.
ARCO says it will freeze prices for a week, but after that, it couldn't keep them low if competitors are selling for more.
Then we run the risk of a run on our service stations. We could run out of gasoline. And if we do, that would cause panic buying.
Oil's got a bad record. Texaco, Exxon, and other oil companies have been cited in the past for overcharging customers. So Michigan's Governor James J. Blanchard demanded today that oil companies roll back prices, accusing them of price gouging.
We are asking servicemen possibly to risk their lives. And this is the last thing any business should be doing here to our consumers in America.
Some analysts say dip into these domes, the government's petroleum reserve. There's an 81-day supply, and that could help keep prices down. Still, critics say the president isn't getting tough enough with the oil companies.
He has got to call in oil company executives and read them the riot act.
The government itself may be affected by this price rise. Reportedly, the administration had been discussing higher gasoline taxes to balance the budget, a move that may not be possible now that gasoline's already so expensive. Ray Brady, CBS News, New York.
There are obvious perils ahead tonight for the American motorist with the Middle East crisis pressuring gasoline prices. And even in those parts of the countries which produce oil and face a bonanza, expressions of joy are muted by memory. Scott Pelley explains.
The surge in crude prices is a windfall for the oil states. Overnight, wells are pumping millions in higher profits. Today, benchmark crude was down, but during a steep rise over the last week, it topped $28, the highest price in 5 years.
Couldn't be better right now. It's getting better all the time.
6 big oil states would gain the most. If today's price held for a year, these states would take in an extra $16 billion. Even so, no one expects an instant boom in new exploration because the industry lost too much in the crash of the 80s.
It's completely devastated. There used to be 4,500 rigs working, and now there's 1,000.
The real estate and savings and loan disasters were triggered in part by the collapse in oil. But today's higher prices are not expected to bring relief.
We're looking at a $150 billion real estate problem, and I don't think higher energy prices are going to generate asset values up by that much.
For now, many oil men are waiting to see if prices remain high.
I don't know how long it's going to be up there. And I don't think a lot of people are going to jump in and start drilling wells.
5 years of hard times have tamed the Texas wildcatters. Any broad expansion of U.S. oil production will depend on long-term stability in prices and in the Middle East. Scott Pelley, CBS News, Dallas.
One of the foreign hostages in Lebanon was released today. He's identified as 33-year-old Emmanuel Christen, one of 2 Swiss Red Cross workers kidnapped 10 months ago. His release leaves 15 Westerners still held against their will in Lebanon, including 6 Americans. A rebel leader in war-torn Liberia today released the 16 foreigners he took hostage over the weekend. The group includes 1 American. That rebel leader, Prince Johnson, had taken the foreigners from a hotel in Monrovia just as U.S. Marines were landing in the Liberian capital to evacuate Americans. A shift in policy today at the American Bar Association. The ABA's policymaking body voted to abandon its pro-choice stance on abortion, adopted just 6 months ago. The lawyers' group will now be officially neutral on the issue. The Bush administration had threatened to pay less attention to ABA judge ratings unless the pro-choice stance was dropped. In a moment, Dan Rather in Amman will be back with more from the Middle East.
To get rid of her gray, my wife can spend 40 minutes. But I discovered the 5-minute hair coloring.
The revolutionary discovery called Just for Men from the leader in men's hair coloring. Simply apply Just for Men and in 5 minutes shampoo out.
Gray is blended away. The look of my natural color is back in 5 minutes. That was me, and it won't fade or wash out.
My hair takes forever, but you look great in just 5 minutes.
The look of your natural color in just 5 minutes with Just for Men.
I didn't think it could happen here, but it did. It started slowly. Before I knew it, the damage was done.
Water damage, it's a growing menace. To prevent it, millions look to Thompson's Water Seal to protect their homes. Thompson's unique formula penetrates wood, concrete, and brick to lock water out like nothing else.
It's gotta be stopped before it's too late.
Trust the #1 seller, Thompson's Water Seal. First and lasting protection.
The pain is in my very, very lower back, and it just aches.
Today, Ray Stewart is trying extra-strength Tylenol gel caps. For pain like his, why take aspirin or ibuprofen when nothing works better than Tylenol gel caps?
The pain is totally gone. I have no pain in my back. From now on, I'm going to take Tylenol gel caps for my pain. I truly feel it's amazing.
Tylenol gel caps, only from Tylenol. For everyday pain, nothing works better. And for your allergies, now try Tylenol Allergy Sinus.
Thousands of Americans are at risk at one way or the other now here in the Middle East. Joining me is CBS News Middle Eastern correspondent Bob Simon, who's been talking today to Americans here in Jordan.
The American expatriates here are watching the gathering war clouds with alarm. They've been drawn to the Arab world by romance or money or religion. The Americans who've come to Amman seem to have been attracted by the American way of life.
I live in a suburb, and the suburb is, the homes are as nice there as they would be in one of the better suburbs in the Chicago area.
Amman is the town of the Safeway instead of the Shuk, so American in so many ways that the ice cream is Italian and the cafes are Viennese. It is a clean and quiet place, a middle kingdom, nestled in the hills between Israel and Iraq.
I'm very worried. I'm really scared.
It scares me.
The Jordanian government has parked heavy weapons outside the American embassy to protect it from Jordanian fury. The snack bar called the American Corner changed its name this week. It's the Oriental Corner now. In an American consultancy firm, everyone listens to the radio all the time. The American directors are worried about war, but even more worried about Arab rage.
If they see somebody with blonde hair and blue eyes, they figure he's probably not an Arab, and so I could be a target.
Are you thinking about leaving?
No, I'm not. I'm sending my wife home.
Members of the American Women's Club spend a lot of time together these days. They're angry more than anything else, angry at the American policy, which they fear may be disrupting their world.
I'm not afraid for myself. I'm afraid for this area, and I'm afraid for its people. We're very disappointed in our country. And it seems to me that if they're listening, they're not hearing.
What the Americans in Jordan are hearing, Dan, is a clash between their homeland and the place they've come to call home.
Bob Simon, thanks. And that's the news from our world tonight. For latest developments on the still building crisis here in the Middle East, stay tuned to this CBS station. CBS News will have a special broadcast on the showdown around the Gulf tonight at 11:30, 10:30 Central and Mountain Time. For now, from Amman, Jordan, Dan Rather for the CBS Evening News. We'll see you back here live and direct from the Middle East right after your late local news.
A shame. It will never catch on in America. And the taste is incredible. But you'll never get past the name. Muslix is too European. You Americans like labels, shredded wheat, cornflakes, no surprises. This taste is always a surprise. It's crisp, nutty, and sweet with fruit. Oh, much too exotic for the American palate.
Kellogg's Muslix. Over 50 million boxes sold in America.
I'd like to place an order.
We interrupt this order.
On page 61.
For something else that delivers.
I don't like that.
The card that actually pays you cash back for every charge.
It's a gift.
The Discover card.
What'd you do for lunch? Just a little shopping.
It pays to Discover, the card that pays you back.
We baked pearls made of denture material in this blueberry pie to prove how powerfully Efferdent, America's leading denture cleanser, removes this tough stain, even in between. Efferdent, stronger than stains.
Win a trip to the new Universal Studios, Florida, courtesy of Listerine, Listerment, and Efferdent. See Kong's Fury. See Jaws Bite. Fly U.S. Air and stay at the Twin Towers Hotel. Look for Listerine, Listerment, and Efferdent sweepstakes details in Sunday, August 19th papers. Wow!
I'm Harry Smith.
And I'm Paula Zahn. Tomorrow, the latest on the continuing conflict in the Middle East.
Also, we'll talk with Mel Gibson about his new movie on CBS this morning.
This is CBS.